Tonight, we come on the air with a showdown at the White House, so to speak, with the Israeli Prime Minister right now taking meetings with the president and Vice President Kamala Harris. We're going to break down the high stakes on both the global and the political stages as well. Plus, NBC's new focus group sit down with Nikki Haley's one-time supporters, where those voters now stand in the likely Trump-Harris matchup. Then out west, thousands of people, they're fleeing some out-of-control wildfires, the dangerous situation, at least 5 states with firefighters. They're struggling to put it all out. Then we go down to the Bahamas, the growing mystery around a woman who vanished from a yoga retreat. NBC's new reporting about an eerily similar disappearance more than a decade ago. Plus, the social media outlet that could sway black voters come November. That is in tonight's original, later on in the show. Hey, everybody, I'm Yasmin in for Hallie, and tonight we start with the critical meetings going down at the White House as we speak. Vice President Kamala Harris meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We expect them to make an appearance any moment in the room that you're seeing here. We're going to bring it to you live as soon as they do. The president spoke with Bibi Netanyahu earlier as relations between the United States and Israel are appearing frosty, with the Biden administration now racing to lock in a ceasefire deal in the Middle East. Less than 24 hours after President Biden gave that historic speech from the Oval Office, where he looked to cement his legacy and outlined what his administration really wants to do next. With so much of the attention now on the campaign trail, Kamala Harris on a blitz of appearances, so to speak, hitting her rivals hard, speaking to a major teachers union over in Texas earlier today, and then also saying that she is ready to debate former President Donald Trump, whether he wants to or not.
Ready to debate Donald Trump. I have agreed to the previously agreed upon September 10th debate. He agreed to that previously. Now it appears he's backpedaling, but I'm ready. And I think the voters deserve to see the split screen that exists in this race on a debate stage. And so I'm ready. Let's go.
Exactly when, right, is the big question that is still TBD. Harris now has less than 2 weeks, count them 2, to pick her running mate. And we're just hearing from Republican allies of Donald Trump who say they see Pennsylvania's Josh Shapiro, the governor there, as a strong contender. All of it as the vice president and the former president sharpen their attacks against each other. Harris's team now sending out an email describing Donald Trump as, I'm quoting here, old and quite weird. Trump referring to her as a, in his words, lunatic at a campaign rally, as the battle between the two rivals only gets more and more and more brutal. We've got team coverage. Jimmy Shalsindor has the latest on the Harris campaign. Mark Murray is here with some new polling data. You don't want to miss that. Want to start, though, with Kelly O, who's at the White House for us, talking through all things that are happening inside the White House behind you, Kelly. Walk us through these meetings so far. We know Bibi Netanyahu has met with the president so far, meeting with Harris, I believe, as we speak. We're awaiting them to meet together as well with that pool spray. What do we know?
Well, this is a significant day because the U.S. relationship with Israel is always an imperative. And over these last many months, it has been front and center. And there have been tensions. That's obvious. There was a cordial spirit in the Oval Office with the president and Benjamin Netanyahu. In the words that they shared publicly before reporters, the president didn't really preview the meeting except to say there was a lot of important stuff to talk about. And Netanyahu used the moment to acknowledge the president's long public service and to pay his respects, if you will. And that is probably important in this moment, not only because of what happened last night with the president choosing to be a one-term president and passing the torch, but also because of the sensitivities that have been going on for months. Whereas the prime minister is trying to kind of hedge all of his options, dealing with the current sitting president, speaking with the vice president, who is now the candidate for Democrats, and then he'll be going off to Mar-a-Lago to speak with Donald Trump. So trying to cover all the potential leadership spots that he's got to touch. With families, of course, deeply personal, and the U.S. position is that Israel needs to get it done in terms of agreeing to a ceasefire to try to get the secure release of those hostages that are alive, to retrieve the remains of those that can be found and determined. The U.S., of course, has done a lot on intel with that, with the Israelis, and trying to get to a point of some stability in the area. And that's part of what we've been seeing. The vice president's meeting is separate. That in and of itself is not unusual. It does reflect her schedule today, having been in Texas earlier but it sure takes on extra proportion when you consider that she is now stepping forward as the likely candidate for Democrats, and now a candidate in the way she's handling all of this. So the attention on this meeting certainly has ramped up.
So I want you to pull, Kelly, if you will, on a thread there that you talked about, which is the legacy of President Biden here in negotiating and trying to strike a deal between Hamas and Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu in Israel, so to speak. And also the point of which President Biden is negotiating from, and now saying he obviously is not running for re-election, he is negotiating from a somewhat of a lame duck position. And does that kind of put him at a disadvantage?
Well, certainly the president is going to push off the term lame duck as much as possible. His aides are already doing that. The reality is what it is, that he is in office for the next several months, and that gives him that power to use. And certainly he has been providing Israel with lots of munitions and support and intelligence and the full complement of things that the U.S. provides as a key partner. So he still has credibility and still has certainly the levers of power that he can use. At the same time, it is important for the president to want to see this wound down and a resolution during his time in office, to focus on his foreign policy experience, something that he has reflected on many times, that this is a place where he would like to see a resolution. We've seen how it has cost him politically over the months when he was still the active candidate, given all of the emotion, and he'd like to see it get done as soon as possible.
Kelly O'Donnell for us. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it. Want to go to Yemi Shalcindor with the latest from the Harris camp. I want to talk about this meeting that we're waiting to happen first between the vice president and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and how incredibly important it is, considering now she is taking the position of being the potential nominee for the Democratic Party. You think about the uphill battle that President Biden had, especially with young voters, Yamish, and voters, Arab voters, especially out of Michigan. I sat down with many of them during the Michigan primaries. And the major reason was because of his stance and his positioning on Israel and Gaza. And the vice president has been more, shall we say, hard-lined on her positioning when it comes to Israel and Gaza, and has been more outspoken when calling for a ceasefire, for instance. How important is this meeting that she is going to be having with the prime minister here, and what does her camp expect to take from it?
Well, it's really important, and Harris allies hope she can appeal to some voters who were uncommitted to Biden because of his stances, even though she is very much a part of the current Middle East policies from, of course, the Biden-Harris emphasis on the Harris administration. Now, Harris has been seen, as you said, as more sympathetic to the civilian death toll in Gaza. For example, she got a lot of attention for her speech in Selma, Alabama in March. At the time, she said what was happening in Gaza was a, quote, clearly a humanitarian catastrophe, and that an immediate 6-week ceasefire was needed. So that got a lot of attention. We also reported that her speech had to be watered down because she wanted to go a little step farther, and the White House sort of pulled that back. So this is really going to be, I think, an issue where she's going to maybe try to have a little bit of daylight from the president, just talking to people around her, but not her actual campaign. Her actual campaign is saying, look, she was on board with whatever President Biden was doing. They were a team together.
Let's pivot, Yamish, while I have you. Let's talk about the campaign trail as well, because she's been incredibly busy on that. You have some new exclusive reporting on that. Current former DOJ officials putting a letter together endorsing the vice president. What more can you tell us?
That's right. My colleague Ryan Riley and I obtained this letter exclusively. In it, more than 40 former Justice Department officials who served under presidents who were both Democrats and Republicans endorse Vice President Harris. They write, the, quote, fabric of the nation, the rule of law, and the future of the democracy are at stake in this election. They also call former President Trump a, quote, grave risk to our country. Esben.
I want to talk about Georgia, an incredibly important state. It was incredibly important, obviously, and pivotal in 2020. I know that the vice president is traveling to Georgia next week. How is her campaign taking shape? How are they going to focus in on Georgia voters?
Well, this plane is sort of being built in midair, but they knew that Georgia was going to be. Yes. You may
stand by for a second, because we're seeing the vice president here shaking hands with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Let's open up the mics, guys, if we can, and take a listen. important to kind of put context to what we're seeing here, Yamiche, and also give folks a view of where they are, right? This is the ceremonial office of the vice president, where she is meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And as you and I spoke a little bit earlier, I was actually covering the day in which she spoke in Selma, Alabama, and she made that somewhat fiery speech. And it would certainly seem like the first time someone from the Biden administration came out and called for somewhat of, as you said, ceasefire, right, for 6 weeks or so. It was a real moment for the Biden administration. It seemed like a bit of a policy change. What is the vice president going to cover here, you think, with the prime minister to get her point across, considering that she is now running for president of the United States and she could be taking on this come November?
Well, at the time when she was calling for that 6-week immediate ceasefire, her office and the White House, the president's office, were both saying that they're saying the same thing. It's just that she was saying it with more vigor. So it was really the delivery is what I was told at the time. But you can see here where she has a sort of opportunity to maybe sort of chart her own course now that she's going to be likely the Democratic nominee running for president here. So in some ways, you can see her office sort of trying to take that role. They put out a statement that said she was going to say that she wanted to see an end to the war and that she understood that Israel had a right and should have a right to defend itself, but also said that civilians in Palestine also needed to stop being killed, and also that at the end of this war, that Palestine should also have its rights, its dignity. So that is really sort of the wording and the messaging that's coming out of her office today on an important day where she's, of course, sitting down with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Right now, he's a head of state. She's trying to be a head of state. So this is a really important moment.
Yeah, I mean, and we cannot overstate this. So we're going to talk to Mark Murray in just a second, but how consequential this is for Kamala Harris versus how it would have been possibly even a week ago before the decision that was made by the president, and knowing all the eyes that are on her because Gaza, because the issue and the war between Israel and Gaza was so, it was going to be an uphill battle for President Biden in his reelection campaign.
Yeah, and it's interesting that as soon as this news broke that President Biden was stepping down and that she was going to be endorsed by him, I started getting emails from people because I'd been doing reporting, as I know you have, of Muslim voters. And one of the emails I got was the head of the uncommitted movement. This is a movement of Muslim voters, of Arab voters, who are saying that they should not, that people should not vote for President Biden, that they should be voting uncommitted in the primaries, and that they should really be undecided right now in the election. Now, of course, Harris is stepping into that role, and the first thing they said was, well, Harris can earn our vote if she takes certain policy positions. And one of them, they said, was really trying to call for the end of civilian death in Gaza. So they're hoping that she can sort of change and get their support in a way. It's really interesting to hear that. I will say, though, in reporting on the ground, the interesting thing here is that these voters don't have anywhere to go, right? Former President Trump isn't better on this policy than she was, and that she is than President Biden was. So there really is, I think, this catch-22 where she is going to be trying to appeal to these voters, but these voters also have a hard choice to make. It. They're either going to sit at home or they're going to vote for her, likely.
And that is such a good point, because I think it's more a question of, do they stay at home? Do they not vote at all? Or do they actually pull the lever for Kamala Harris, whereas before it seemed as if they were leaning in the direction of sitting it out no matter what. And I think that's really going to come into question in the next few weeks. Yamiche, quickly here, where are we on Veep stakes?
On Veep stakes, where we are is that people are sort of going and having interviews. There's a list that's still coming together. Things are early. I don't know if we're going to play the sound of some of the candidates talking on TV if you want to take a listen.
I am honored to be considered, and regardless of what comes next, I'll do everything I can between now and Election Day to make sure that the vice president becomes our next president.
She's going to make the right choice. I just want her to choose the person that gives her the best chance to win. Yeah.
So I've been talking to a number of sources who are familiar with the Harris campaign's thinking, and they've pointed out that Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina, Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, and Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona are sort of seen as the top contenders. But that doesn't mean that they're finalists. There's a long list here that we put up, so there's still a lot of time. But she is going to have to make this decision quickly, and the campaign plans to make it before August 7th so that they can ensure that both Harris and whoever she picks makes it on the ballot in all 50 states.
Yeah, I was going to say, not that much time, just 2 weeks or so. Yeah. Wow. Yamiche Alcindor, thank you. Appreciate it. So So we've been talking a lot about polling. Who better to talk to about that than Mark Murray to walk us through some of the new polls that are coming out? And I know that Yamiche and I, Mark, we're talking a lot about young voters, especially in light of the meeting that the vice president is having right now with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. But I know that we have some new polling that we're seeing from the New York Times, all within a margin of error. Walk us through some of the numbers that we're seeing with a Trump v. Harris election.
Yeah, Yasmin, the New York Times and Siena College came out with a brand new national poll today after Joe Biden's exit from the race, and it shows a really competitive contest with, among likely voters, Donald Trump with a 1-point lead over Harris, well within the margin of error. Among registered voters, it's Trump with a 2-point lead, again within the margin of error. Significantly, however, this is a much smaller lead for Biden than existed right after that disastrous debate performance. The New York Times Siena poll had Trump with a much larger lead than he has right now. And what is kind of significant is that at least in this poll, this race has kind of come back to where the race was back in April, with Trump with a 1 to 2 point lead. And again, I emphasize this is a very competitive race. Polls can kind of jump all the way around. But right now, in the totality of all the polls that we've seen since Biden's exit, this is a very close and competitive contest.
How much do you chalk this up to kind of new excitement over Kamala Harris versus lasting support?
Yeah, Yasmin, at least in this one poll, there is excitement and unity around Harris. The Democratic Party has kind of come back to the fold. There had been some previous Democratic holdouts when Biden was still in the race. That doesn't exist right now. And you were talking about the young voters, at least in this one survey. Young voters have kind of snapped back to supporting Harris, where there wasn't all that much support when it came to Joe Biden. But interestingly, Donald Trump now has a little more support with seniors. And so for every action, there's a reaction.
I know that NBC has this new focus group out on previous Nikki Haley voters. Where are we landing with that?
Yeah, this was fascinating. We had a focus group of 14 different, 14 focus group members who had voted for Nikki Haley in the primary season. 3 are voting for Kamala Harris, they ended up saying, but they were clear Biden voters before this. And the rest of them, half are voting for Donald Trump, half are voting for third party or not voting at all. But Yasmin, what was fascinating, some of them had some nice things to say about Kamala Harris, but they also said they want to hear a lot more about her. And that, to me, that battle for her to define herself is one of the big objectives 3 months from now.
Mark Murray, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, shifting gears here. Thousands of people forced to evacuate their homes as wildfires burn out of control out west. Firefighters, they're battling hundreds of blazes in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, California. The situation there becoming more and more dangerous. That explosion caught on camera in Butte County, where the Park Fire has expanded to roughly 45,000 acres in less than 24 hours. It's destroyed homes. More buildings are at risk. Today, officials arresting a man who's suspected of actually starting that fire. Then over in Oregon, the governor calling in the National Guard for help after fires there reached mega fire status. That means there are at least 100,000 acres each. The Durkee fire alone burning around 270,000 acres, causing on and off closures of the I-84 corridor. And now lightning storms are making it even tougher for firefighters to do their jobs. I want to bring in NBC's David Noriega, who's been following all of this for us. If you will, David, start for us in California and what firefighters are up against there.
Yeah, Yasmin, the Park Fire is up near Chico. Chico is a city of about 100,000 people, and the fire is very, very close to the city itself. The outer edge of the fire is only about a mile away from the eastern edge of the city. The reason for that is that this fire started in a park, and a big urban wilderness park that's just outside the city. You mentioned that arrest. The Butte County District Attorney says that they have a 42-year-old man, as yet unnamed, in custody who was allegedly witnessed pushing a car on fire into a gully in that park. That is what is suspected to have started that fire. And it's because it was an instance of alleged arson that happened so close to the city that this fire is so close to major population centers. About 4,000 people have been ordered evacuated. The authorities up there in Butte County and in neighboring counties say that they're throwing everything they have at this fire, and it's still not enough. They're drawing in resources from elsewhere in this state. And a lot of people up there very anxiously watching this fire. Yasmin?
And then heading north, he's got these mega fires in Oregon. What's happening there, David?
Yeah, I mean, so the Durkee fire that you mentioned, Yasmin, that's the acreage that you mentioned is about 400 square miles. Jeez. Just as a point of reference, the entire city of New York is about 300 square miles. So the firefighters up there are really struggling to contain that. When you talk about containing a fire, you're talking about physically containing the perimeter of the fire by doing such things as digging ditches. When you're dealing with a mega fire of that sheer size, that is incredibly difficult to do, especially when the weather is working against you, with winds of up to 70 or 75 miles per hour, thunderstorms. One of the sheriffs in the counties in question up there did mention that there was a little bit of rain overnight and into today, which was helpful, but not enough, not even close to enough to actually put that fire out or really make any meaningful progress in containing it. Yasmin?
All right, David Noriega for us. Thank you, David. To Uvalde, Texas now, where a former school police officer is pleading not guilty tonight to charges that he failed to protect 19 children and 2 teachers killed in the May 2022 school shooting there. Some of the victims' loved ones angrily confronting the former officer as he left court.
Look at us.
What is he going to say?
Look at us.
Say something.
Say something to us.
Sir, with all respect, you're smiling in there.
You can't even say sorry to us.
That man's name, Adrian Gonzalez, facing 29 counts of child endangerment. He was one of the first officers on the scene that day. The indictment says he, quote, failed to engage, distract, or delay the shooter. Nearly 400 officers responded to that shooting, including the school's police chief, who also faces charges, but they waited more than 70 minutes to go into a classroom and kill the attacker. When it was all over, 21 people, mostly 9 and 10-year-olds, along with 2 teachers, they were all dead. You can see their names and their faces here. NBC's Guad Venegas is outside the courthouse for us in Uvalde to talk more about this. I want to talk about, Guad, this moment, right? I was down in Uvalde when this mass shooting happened. The families, that town, the state torn apart over this, especially over those 70 minutes in which officers waited outside those classrooms and did not go in and engage that shooter. How significant is this moment for those families?
Yasmin, one of the biggest issues was the lack of information when this first happened, right? Authorities weren't communicating exactly what happened. So over time, it's been a difficult process for family members and just members of the community trying to understand what happened and who was responsible for that delayed response. So you've got family members that have been waiting for a very long time for investigations to take place and for charges to come up. So we now have 2 officers, 2 of the officers who were part of that school district police, the first school police agency to respond, now facing charges. Former police chief Pete Arredondo, and today Adrian Gonzalez arriving in court. In fact, half of the people that were in court today were family members and members of the community who were there to represent the victims, who were very upset. Let's hear from the father of one of those victims who spoke to us after the hearing today.
There's a lot of anger because he walks in all smug, you know, like he didn't do anything wrong. And if you take off the wrong in that situation, absolutely, he didn't do anything. He let the shooter past him and didn't stop him at all.
He also told us that he was surprised to know that 2 officers have been indicted after that difficult process that they've been through. Adrian Gonzalez pled not guilty, just like Pete Arredondo, and that's just the beginning of a legal process that will continue. And we'll have to keep in mind that there were hundreds of officers that arrived that day. We'll have to wait and see if more charges are brought against other officers.
So can you talk quickly more about that? Because you mentioned it, right? There was this school police officers, there was local police as well, there was DPS, 400 or so plus officers that stood outside those classrooms for 70 minutes. We saw the video, we saw the tape as those children were cowering inside with that school shooter. What other legal fallout could we see, and how quickly could we see it?
Right. So we know the grand jury brought these indictments against these 2 officers. And we also know that the Department of Justice had a report that shared details indicating that there were multiple failures of the agencies that responded that day. So we've seen these charges against the 2 officers, but there's also been legal action taken by the families here in Uvalde, different ones. There was a lawsuit against the company that manufactured the rifle that was used by the shooter that day, Daniel Defense. And there was also another lawsuit against Meta that owns Instagram, Instagram, and also the company that makes the video game Call of Duty, Activision Blizzard, indicating, or they accused both companies of being used by the gun manufacturer to promote the gun. And eventually that's how the young man that bought the gun and used the gun at the shooting was able to learn more about the weapon. So they're accusing them. And there's also another lawsuit from the parents against Texas Department of Public Safety. They are also suing some of those state troopers. So that's the legal action that's been taken by the families. And again, we're still waiting to see if more charges will be brought against any other police agency that involved the officers responding that day.
God, thank you for being there. Appreciate it. Tonight, everybody, NASA is saying 2 of its astronauts now in space for 50 days and counting are going to have to wait a little bit longer before they can come home from the International Space Station, setting no official date to bring them back. The space agency saying they still need to finish doing some tests on the ground before they give their astronauts the go-ahead to come home. Boeing's first crewed Starliner test flight went up to space in early June, and it's been there ever since. That is much longer than the 8 days originally planned for. NASA says it's all because of issues with the thrusters on the capsule, and that in a worst-case scenario, they have backup plans for getting the astronauts, the 2 people that you're seeing here, home as soon as possible. But they're still hoping that the Starliner capsule is actually going to work and then be able to bring the astronauts back and forth from the space station for years to come. I want to bring in NBC's Jesse Kirsch, who's been following all of this for us. Walk us through this, Jesse. What exactly is holding NASA back here from green-lighting this return for these astronauts?
Yeah, so Yasmin, at this point, officials tell us they've completed ground testing, but they want to do a little bit more testing in space. Namely, officials say that they want to do a fire test of the thrusters in space while the craft is still docked at the ISS. So we are expecting that potentially this weekend. And then NASA says it also wants to conduct an agency review, which it is aiming could happen as soon as late next week. So we talk about those things needing to happen before NASA and Boeing are ready to send the crew back in Starliner. That means we're looking at least another week before its 2-person crew could potentially be heading back to Earth in Starliner. And officials have stressed that they believe the craft is safe for the crew to get in and come home in right now if there were an emergency. So this is about them checking all of their boxes and going through all of the research that they want to do on this while it's still up there.
So all that said, they did say they have a backup plan if, in fact, they can't come back on the Starliner. Is there a limit to which these astronauts can remain at the space station?
Yeah, so officials have said that they have a contingency plan, but they wouldn't go into much detail about what that is, what kind of spacecraft it would involve the astronauts coming home in if it wasn't the Starliner. They say the plan is still to get them home on Starliner. Officials have previously said they weren't concerned about any clothing or food shortages, but we do know that the astronauts have been borrowing clothing from other crew members on the ISS because they left their luggage at home to make room for toilet fixing equipment before takeoff. You can't make this stuff up. Here's part of what officials said today about the ongoing situation.
Right now, we're in the middle of the teardown of the thruster. So we have the thruster at the White Sands Test Facility. It's in the lab. It's been disassembled. And we're looking very carefully at the fuel on the fuel valve and the oxidizer valve. We are following the data, and we'll schedule that review when we need to. And then after that, we'll set the undock time.
So that's what officials are working through right now. And Yasmin, what we're talking about in terms of timeline, one other thing to note, officials say that they've extended the timeline of the batteries for the spacecraft to 90 days from 45 days. So they do still have more wiggle room, it appears, up there.
I'm sure there's some anxious family members wanting to see those astronauts touch down back on Earth. Jesse Kirsch, thank you. Coming up, everybody, we got some huge changes at Southwest Airlines. Why it's getting rid of something that it's very famous for and what it means for travelers like you. Plus, an arrest after a house went up in flames in Connecticut. Why firefighters intentionally burned it down. Southwest Airlines announcing some major changes today. The carrier saying they're abandoning their famous open seating approach. In case you're not familiar with that, that is when passengers literally race to get the best seats on the plane. After 53 years of this open seating approach, Southwest says they're planning to offer premium seating as soon as next year. It's coming as the airline faces pressure to boost some lackluster earnings. I want to bring in Emily Ikeda, who's following this for us. This is major. This is what Southwest has been known for a very long time, whether you liked it or not.
Yeah.
So it's a huge change for them.
What is Southwest without the rush, the mad dash to get on the plane? And I think that this shift, listen, people that are really big fans, the super fans of Southwest, they're going to point out Southwest is known for accessibility, affordability, the quick boarding process. And their fear is by moving away from that, it will also move away from those things when we lose the open seating and we move into the assigned seating. But the CEO points to research they collected. Some 80% of their customers say that they prefer an assigned seat, and they say that the #1 reason why people are not choosing Southwest is the lack of assigned seats. So we're hearing a little bit of back and forth from customers. Take a listen here.
It's more convenient if you go where you want to sit, where you want to sit.
Typically, when you have people rushing the section 1 to board section 2, you got people just running in front of you and different things like that. I think it's nice to know that your seat is secure.
There's been a lot of pressure on Southwest right now. You look at its Q2 numbers, its profit is down some 46% compared to last year. So they're facing a lot of pressure, especially from investors, and they're hoping that by rolling out assigned seat, that will appeal to more people. Also, they're going to be introducing premier seating, so about a third of the plane will have extra leg room. So it's kind of this move to these other major airlines like Delta and American. And the difference is a lot of these airlines right now across the industry, they're experiencing overcapacity. Despite the record summer travel,
they're always overbooked.
They have no. But what I mean is they have extra seats right now. They have so many extra seats. But the difference is because Southwest doesn't have these premier seats, these extra costly seats, they're not seeing the lift in their revenue. So they're hoping that this will help dig them out of that scenario.
I gotta tell you, I get it because I like an assigned seat, and whenever I fly Southwest, I would have some anxiety about where I was going to end up if I got there too late and suddenly I was in the middle in row.
And the people are running.
75.
It's a mad dash. This is a scramble, and so I think for a lot of people, it could
sharp
potentially be
elbows
relieving.
when you're
But
boarding Southwest.
there's definitely a group of people that loved it, and they're going to miss it.
Yeah, Emily Ikeda, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, I want to get you over to the 5 things that are things that you should know about tonight. #1, the Missouri Supreme Court now blocking the release of a man whose conviction was overturned after the state AG's request for a stay. We told you about this last night. Christopher Dunn has been incarcerated for more than 30 years for a murder he says he did not commit. He was set to be freed last night after a judge ordered his release. Dunn's team says they're working to respond to the AG's motion. #2, U.S. and Canadian fighter jets intercepting multiple Chinese and Russian bombers that were flying in international airspace near Alaska. According to the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD says the bombers did not enter American or Canadian airspace and were not seen as a threat. Defense officials say they're going to continue monitoring the area. #3, Disney Plus, Hulu, Max, they're launching their streaming bundle today. Versions of the bundle, one with ads for about $17 a month or an ad-free version for about $30 a month. The company says it's going to save subscribers up to 38%. #4, Prince Harry says his ongoing fights with British tabloids are a major reason for his rift with the royal family. In a new interview with ITV News, remember, Harry has filed multiple lawsuits against the UK press. And late last year, a judge ruled his phone was hacked by journalists working for the Daily Mirror. And then #5, it's an end of an era, folks. Billy Joel, tonight, his final performance of his monthly residency at Madison Square Garden. The concert will be his 150th performance at the venue, wrapping up a record-breaking 10-year residency. By the way, I saw a show there, I would like to say, and it was incredible. His show. It was incredible. When we come back, well, we're just learning about the disappearance of another American from a yoga retreat in the Bahamas, plus everything you need to know about what could be the most ambitious Olympic opening ceremony ever. We're taking you to Paris hours before it kicks off on the Seine. That's coming up next. All right, breaking tonight, we have been following that story of an American woman who went missing from a yoga retreat in the Bahamas last month. Tonight, NBC News is the first U.S. outlet to report that another American went missing from that same retreat over a decade ago. 52-year-old Wesley Bell disappeared from there back in 2013 after he wandered off to go snorkeling, according to someone who was on the retreat with him. It appears there's no evidence of foul play in Bell's case, but police have not commented so far on this matter. drawing parallels to this year's June disappearance of Taylor Casey. I want to bring out NBC Out's Matt Levitas, who broke the story for us and joining me now. This is fascinating, intriguing, a lot of questions, it seems, and not a lot of answers. Let's talk about this discovery of Wesley Bell a decade ago and his disappearance. Is there any connection between his disappearance and the one we learned about in June?
So right now, police have not returned our request for comment. I spoke with Wesley's father, Don, earlier in the week, who said that there was a massive search for his son, but they were not successful. They did not find his body. He believed that his son drowned. I also spoke with a woman who was with Wesley on that retreat back in 2013. She said that he went snorkeling the day before he disappeared. They found his clothes and his hat on the beach the next day. As of right now, we do not have any reason to believe that these cases are connected, except for the fact that both of these people went missing while they were on this yoga retreat.
So then there's Taylor Casey, and Taylor's family did actually not reveal that she was a trans woman initially when she went missing because they were afraid it would distract from the investigation. Where are we on this investigation as to what happened to her? And have we heard anything else from the family?
Right. So when her family initially started speaking with the media, they did not disclose that she was transgender, which raises a ton of questions as to whether or not she could have been targeted for her gender identity.
Right.
Now, I spoke with her mom, who said that she didn't want the media to know because she thought that the media might actually disparage her daughter for her gender identity, or that they wouldn't take the case as seriously. Where that case stands today, police found Taylor's phone in the ocean several weeks ago. More recently, they told us that they were not able to recover any sort of information on that phone. But with this new information that someone went missing 10 years at the exact same yoga retreat, we have more questions than we do answers.
Certainly. Matt Levitas, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So NBC covers hundreds of stories each day, and because it's tough to read, to watch, or listen to all of them, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment that we call The Local. From our Northeast Bureau, New York City officials are going to start testing gun detectors in subway stations this week. It's the latest push to address public safety concerns. Officials say the detection system is similar to the ones that you see in airports and will be installed at various stations for 1 month. Also from our Northeast Bureau, police in Connecticut arresting a man after finding fireworks going off during a house fire. Basically, the fire department tried to put out the flames, then decided the safest thing to do would be to intentionally burn the home, safely eliminating the risk from the fireworks. Police say they evacuated homes in the area before this all happened, and no one was hurt. The man is facing a few charges, including reckless endangerment. Then from our Western Bureau, the Coast Guard rescuing a man from an emergency raft off the coast of Washington. He tried to signal for help after his boat started to take on water. Eventually, he was able to get on a life raft, and a Coast Guard helicopter spotted him, pulling him up. He apparently refused medical treatment. All right, coming up, it started as a gossip page and now has some serious political coverage. And both parties want a piece of the Shade Room's massive audience. My conversation with the founder of the Shade Room and the original tonight. That's next. To tonight's original on a topic that we've been reporting on for a while now. It's a media outlet with a huge black audience that could end up being highly influential in this election. The Shade Room started as this kind of TMZ-style gossip page, but has become a massive platform with millions of viewers and a demographic that both candidates are going to try to win over. But the meteoric growth has not been without some controversy. We spoke with a founder of the Shade Room about the outlet's rise and the responsibility.
The Shade Room. Things between Erica Mena and Safari have been pretty quiet lately. What started as a celebrity gossip Instagram page rooted in the black community, once even called Instagram's TMZ, is rapidly transforming into a full-fledged media company, pushing into original programming and serious political coverage.
The Shade Room was started on accident. It was a dare from one of my friends to do something with my life because I was unemployed.
Angie Wandu says she founded the Shade Room broke and down on her luck 10 years ago.
It blew up. It got over 10,000 followers in the first week and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, 6 months in, it was 500,000, and from there, it's constantly grown.
We went to South Carolina and sat down with former VP and 2020 president candidate Joe Biden.
Now, Wandu's team says the Shade Room has 40 million followers across their platforms. The site still looks more like TMZ than the New York Times, and posts often use information from other media outlets. But the Shade Room reportedly brings in millions of dollars a year, although the company would not confirm revenue numbers with NBC News. It's even joined the White House press pool.
Traveling with Vice President Kamala Harris on Air Force Two.
I am Kamala Harris, and this is a special TSR Investigates.
That more serious tone, sometimes clashing with the company's social media roots. The Instagram page running sponsored content like this alongside more newsy posts, and facing some criticism, especially after a post in 2023 about federal aid for Maui wildfire victims.
The Shade Room, when it comes to information, is one of the worst things that has ever happened to the Black community.
The post accused of underplaying President Biden's wildfire response and not clearly sharing the entirety of federal support.
How do you make sure you have safety measures in place so that there's no misinformation put out through the Shade Room?
If you go online, people will say if it's not on the Shade Room, we don't believe it, right? Because being reputable is something that is really important to us. One of the things that we've done is all of our writers now have to have journalism degrees. We also hired a political consultancy firm, so all of our political posts are filtered through that.
As it continues to grow, and with a historic election coming up in November, the Shade Room offers a unique conduit to many Black voters. Its followers and audience called Roomies help make up a demographic that proved crucial to Biden's election in 2020, one that now both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are aggressively courting. Support for both Biden and Harris have traditionally been strong amongst Black voters. But NBC's latest polling showing 32% of those voters currently disapproving of President Biden. As Kamala tries to re-energize the campaign for president, the spotlight will turn to platforms like the Shade Room and its massive audience.
Even just the fact that we are a part of the press pool, even the fact that they have opened the doors to the Shade Room and platforms like it shows you that they understand the power of the Black vote.
And we asked the Shade Room, by the way, about how they're going to be covering Kamala Harris's campaign now that she has declared in a statement. Angie Wandu told us we are going to cover her speaking engagements, audience, and celebrity opinions, her policies in the same way we will do for the opposing candidate. All right, switching gears here. No Barbenheimer phenomenon driving record crowds to movie theaters this summer. It's been a slow season for blockbusters so far. But tonight, people are really out for the new superhero movie, Deadpool and Wolverine, hitting theaters today, which could be the biggest movie of the year. Experts are saying Deadpool and Wolverine could make over $1 billion at the box office in the long run, with an expected opening weekend tally of over $160 million. Would be a record for an R-rated movie. Our Chloe Malas is at the movies here in New York with this premiere happening. I got to tell you, as I scroll through my Instagram feed or any social media that I have on my phone, all I see is interviews with essentially the stars of these films, because these premieres are going to be, it seems, so huge. Why all the hype?
There is so much hype. First of all, I'm here in New York City, Yasmin, in front of a theater where fans are catching those early screenings, and I've been talking to all of them, and I really feel like I have an education on Wolverine and Deadpool. So the reason that there's so much hype is it's the first time that we've seen both Wolverine and Deadpool in a movie ever in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, we did see them before together in 2009 in the X-Men franchise, but that was under 20th Century Studios. If you remember, a few years ago, Disney actually acquired that, bringing these characters into the Marvel fold. Also, can we talk about the banter between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman off screen? They really are friends in real life. Fans have been talking about how much they love their banter on social media. Even Taylor Swift weighing into the conversation today, saying how much Ryan Reynolds has poured his heart and soul into this movie, and to run, not walk, to go see this. It's also, Yasmin, the first R-rated movie for a Marvel Marvel Cinematic Universe film.
Wow.
So that's very, very significant. And also the box office really needs it. Like you said, things got off to a very slow start with Furiosa. You saw an uptick, though, with movies like Despicable Me 4, Twisters. Obviously, everybody's been talking about that movie, and then Inside Out 2. But this really could make it a Barbenheimer summer, and fans are just saying how great this movie is going to be, and people have been waiting for it for so long.
You say the banter. I have to also say that the two of them are incredibly handsome standing next to each other as well. Just got to state the obvious there. You say you've been talking to fans outside the movie theaters, getting an education on this. What are they telling you?
Well, I actually have one right here. His name's Andrew. Andrew, come on over.
Hello there.
Wow. All right, well, first of all, take a look at the dedication, this outfit. Andrew, tell everyone you just saw the movie this afternoon, so you're one of the few fans that have gotten a chance to see it. Does it live up to the hype?
It definitely lives up to the hype. It was so great. My favorite lines about it, you know, my own line to describe the movie without any spoilers. It was epic, emotional, Excelsior.
Now, it's rated R. And that's incredibly significant because that's the first time we've seen an R rating for a Marvel film. Could you, without spoiling it, does it really need an R rating?
It did need an R rating because what the characters was, and this is a long time coming, from what Ryan and Hugh Jackman have been doing all these years collaborating, like this is what we've been waiting for. This is what everyone wants.
So you're saying it lives up to the hype, though?
It does, and it over exceeds the hype, like over expectations. Yeah.
I love it. Well, listen, Andrew, we've been hanging out with him all afternoon, but he is just one of the many fans, Yasmin, who have been lining up to see this movie, and this is something you're going to be hearing about, not just in the days to come, but potentially the rest of the summer and even into early fall.
You gotta love Andrew's commitment there, rolling out in that costume in 90-degree weather here in New York City. That is a real commitment to the brand, the Marvel brand. I'd love to see you, Chloe, in that costume if you were willing to try.
I wore my Wolverine yellow for y'all.
Okay, there you go.
So that's about as far as I can go without choosing a side.
Close enough. Chloe Melas for us. Thank you, Chloe. Appreciate it. Thank you to Andrew as well. And still to come, a look at the final Olympic opening ceremony preps from Paris coming up next. Oh, man, it's time, everybody. Excitement reaching this fever pitch in Paris and really across the world. We're less than 24 hours out before the Olympics opening ceremony, final preps along the Seine, where the opening ceremony is going to be set with representatives from all participating countries floating down the river in barges. Meanwhile, as thousands of athletes keep settling into the Olympic Village, some are reporting a shortage of certain foods like eggs, according to the French newspaper L'Equipe. The Village's caterers saying they're going to increase volume levels to satisfy athletes. Hopefully they make sure they have an œuf. Get it? That's a French pun. Anyway, Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons is there for us in Paris. I'm just trying to play along here, Keir.
I like that. Yeah.
What's going on with the food? I mean, they need their protein, these athletes. They need their eggs.
Yeah. Yeah, they sure do. And there are those reports, as you mentioned, that they aren't getting them. Listen, it's always the thing with the Olympics that you don't expect. You know, we talk about the things we worry about. We're worried about the Seine, for example. Will it be clean enough? Will it be too rough for an opening ceremony? All good. And yet now we get this other issue, which, frankly, we didn't expect, which is a food shortage. As you say, L'Equipe has been reporting it. Our colleagues at Sky News spoke to Team GB, Team Great Britain. They were told that there is an issue by Team GB. So there does appear to be something of a food shortage at the Athletes' Village. Eggs are being talked about. Clearly, it's not going to be everything. But I think one of the aspects here is that this whole trying to do things sustainably, trying to get the food in locally, all that kind of thing, it's not easy, right? I mean, we already saw the vibe on social media with athletes about those cardboard beds, and people are, you know, kind of laughing about them and testing them out. Again, that was an idea for sustainability. So listen, it is difficult to save the planet, but that doesn't mean it isn't worth it.
Can we talk about this casual drop-in, it seems you had, on French President Emmanuel Macron and everybody else involved with the Olympic Games and how they're feeling ahead of the opening ceremony?
Well, I don't know, a casual drop-in. I mean, it was me and kind of a few hundred other people, all of them more important than I am. But it was a sustainability summit tonight to put the emphasis once again on those issues for the Olympics. Antonio Stanguet, who is, of course, the head of the Paris 2024 Olympics, was there, and I managed to grab him and have a quick word. And I said to him, just simply, how are you feeling? He said, I feel great. And that's the atmosphere you get here, Yasmin, despite what they're trying to pull off with this opening ceremony tomorrow, which is history-making, the first time outside of a stadium, as we have said again and again, but you can't say it too much because, frankly, it's going to be amazing. Despite all that, the atmosphere is buzzing, people seem relaxed, and again, at this conference, they seemed relaxed. The President Macron, came and gave a speech, strolled around, chatted to people, so things appear to be going well. Cross fingers.
Kira, I know the last time you and I spoke, we were talking about whether or not the mayor was going to swim in the Seine, and in fact, we know the mayor did. Did you ever do it, as I challenged you to do?
Yeah. I haven't done it yet.
Okay.
No, thank you, though. I'm just trying, I feel like I need to be healthy for the next few weeks. I've got some work to do.
Yeah, you got some work to do.
I mean, I guess I'm not saying I'm more important than the athletes, obviously. I just want to be clear. I mean, clearly, it's important that they can swim safely, and everyone's telling us that it is going to be safe. But so far, I haven't taken the plunge.
Maybe when the Olympics is all said and done, Kira, we can see you jump in that river there as a celebratory end of the Olympics.
It's a deal. It's a deal.
Okay, then. You heard it here first.
Yes, it's a deal. When I say it's a deal, what I mean is no.
Virtual shake on it. Okay, what I mean is no. Kira Simmons, thank you so much. Appreciate it. By the way, don't forget, you can watch the opening ceremony tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. That's a wrap for this hour. Coverage picks up right now. Tonight, we come on the air with a showdown at the White House. The Israeli Prime Minister right now taking meetings with President Biden, VP Kamala Harris. We're going to break down the high stakes on both the global and political stages. Plus, NBC's new focus group sit down with Nikki Haley's one-time supporters, where those voters now stand in the likely Trump-Harris race. Then out west, thousands of people fleeing some out-of-control wildfires, the dangerous situation in at least 5 states, with firefighters struggling to put it all out. And NASA astronauts waiting for a ride back to Earth on Boeing's Starliner will have to wait even longer. Why the space agency says they still aren't coming home after spending weeks more in space than they had intended. Then major changes coming to a Southwest flight near you, while the airline is saying grounding their signature open seating policy. Hey, everybody, I'm Yasmin. I'm in for Hallie tonight. And we start with the critical meetings going down at the White House. Vice President Kamala Harris meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu just in the last hour or so. The president spoke with him earlier as relations between the U.S. and Israel appear frosty, with the Biden administration now racing to lock in a ceasefire deal in the Middle East. Less than 24 hours after President Biden gave that historic speech from the Oval, where he looked to cement his legacy and outlined what his administration wants to do next. With so much of the attention now on the campaign trail, Kamala Harris on a blitz of appearances, hitting her rivals hard, speaking to a major teachers union over in Texas earlier today, and also saying she is ready to debate former President Donald Trump, whether he wants to or not.
Ready to debate Donald Trump. I have agreed to the previously agreed upon September 10th debate. He agreed to that previously. Now it appears he's backpedaling, but I'm ready. And I think the voters deserve to see the split screen that exists in this race on a debate stage. And so I'm ready. Let's go.
She's ready, let's go. But exactly when the two of them could actually take that stage, that is still TBD. Harris now has less than 2 weeks to pick her running mate. And we're just hearing from Republican allies of the former president who say they see Pennsylvania's Josh Shapiro as a pretty strong contender. All of it as Vice President Harris and Donald Trump, they sharpen their attacks against each other. Harris's team now sending out an email describing Donald Trump as, I'm quoting here, old and quite weird. Trump referring to her as a, in his words, by the way, lunatic at a campaign rally, as the battle between these two rivals only gets more and more brutal. We have got team coverage across the board. Mark Murray is here with new polling data. I want to start, though, with Kelly O'Donnell here at the White House for us. Kelly, if you will, what more do we know about these meetings at the White House with both President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris meeting with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu?
Well, we know that these two sets of meetings and a third involving the hostage families. So that gives it a sense of how this has lasted for an extended piece of the White House day, and that is significant. It reflects the strong relationship between the U.S. and Israel and the critical issues before these leaders, when certainly the U.S. position is steadfast support for Israel, at the same time wanting to see the conflict with Hamas in Gaza winding down towards ceasefire, resolution of the hostages situation, and trying to get to a more stable situation, especially with the degree of humanitarian problems that have existed with hunger and medical needs in Gaza for thousands of people. So the issues have been deeply significant, and the timing is certainly interesting, with the president leaving the campaign stage with Vice President Harris, who would typically meet world leaders, often without much attention. But now it takes on the added specter of, could she be the eventual president? Is that what's coming down the pike? We know that Benjamin Netanyahu is also going to go see his longtime friend Donald Trump. So he is covering all the bases of potential leadership for the U.S. And we expect to hear more about the substance of the meetings. But these are heavy issues with a lot on the line, especially for the hostage families and for the president and his legacy, a desire to see this winding down with U.S. support to bring about a more stable resolution.
He talked about in his address from the Oval last night what he hopes to accomplish in the remaining 6 or so months while he is in office. How important is this conversation? Was this meeting today with the prime minister as part of that?
Well, foreign policy has been a huge part of President Biden's political identity. It is an area where he feels comfortable, where he feels that American leadership is unique in the world. That goes for the Russia-Ukraine war that he has certainly been very involved in, with trying to keep the alliances strong, to expand NATO, and to get Europe to be as supportive economically. And obviously, it's their neighborhood. So that's one piece. At the same time, dealing with the issues with Israel, where he has provided lots of military support, intelligence, and coordinated some of the neighborhood around Israel when Iran was sending in its air munitions, and the U.S. was able to help stop that attack on Israel. So the president has been deeply invested in foreign policy and trying to bring to a stable place and to show American leadership against hostilities, against terrorists, against autocratic leaders. He wants to be able to do that and have a chance to write the last chapter of his presidency with some of that in mind. He has domestic issues, too, but certainly on foreign policy, that's where a president can act as a singular figure, whereas with domestic policy, you certainly need Congress in a lot of ways. That may be harder to do in an election year.
Kelly O'Donnell for us, as always. Kelly, thank you. Want to bring in Mark Murray now, because we talk about polling here and looking at the matchup between Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. I know there's some new polling out from the New York Times. Also looking at young people, I think it's important to note here as we're thinking about this conversation that's being had right now between Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu along with Vice President Kamala Harris. Walk us through some of the things that stood out to you, Mark.
Yeah, let me break down the numbers for you, Yasmin. And overall, this is a really close and competitive race after President Biden's exit from the 2024 presidential contest. The poll overall has Donald Trump ahead by 1 percentage point among likely voters. That's well within the poll's margin of error. And notably, it's actually a much closer contest than it was right after that poor debate performance by Joe Biden, when Donald Trump had a 6-point lead among likely voters. But Yasmin, you asked about young voters in this, and in this current matchup, Harris has about a 20-point lead among young voters over Donald Trump, and that is a much wider lead than we've seen in past polling. And that's just not the only poll that shows Harris doing better among young voters than Biden was doing. But worth also noting, Yasmin, that we end up seeing in this New York Times Siena College poll that Donald Trump's actually doing a little bit better with seniors than he was doing voting when Joe Biden was his opponent. So a little yin and yang when we look at the youth vote versus seniors.
I also think it's interesting because as this new poll is coming out, we're just seeing Harris's stepdaughter kind of hit back at these resurfaced comments from J.D. Vance back in 2021, Mark, where he said the country was being led, and I'm quoting here, by the way, a bunch of childless cat ladies. Walk us through that.
Yeah, and of course that's from older footage from J.D. Vance, and really kind of going to the point that Kamala Harris doesn't have children of her own, but as she in her campaign are fighting back, and also her stepchildren are pointing out that Kamala Harris has stepchildren and has been an active mother, helping to raise them, and so this is actually being litigated. But Yasmin, when we're talking about the polling, it's also worth noting the humongous gender gap that we are seeing between men and female respondents, where Donald Trump has a very, very large lead among men, but Harris has a really big lead among women. And we're seeing a lot of social media responses coming from women who did not like those that prior and previous J.D. Vance response.
All right, Mark Murray for us. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Let's talk about some wildfires that are happening. Thousands of people forced to evacuate their homes as these wildfires are burning out of control out west. Firefighters, they're battling hundreds of blazes in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, California. The situation there, it's becoming more and more dangerous. Take a look. Imagine standing there, that explosion caught on camera in Butte County. The Park fire has expanded to roughly 45,000 acres in less than 24 hours, destroying homes with more buildings at risk. Today, officials arrested a man who's suspected of starting that fire. And then in Oregon, the governor calling in the National Guard for help after fires there reached mega fire status. That means they're at least 100,000 acres each. The Durkee fire alone burning around 270,000 acres, causing on and off closures of I-84. And now lightning storms are making it even tougher for firefighters to do their jobs. I want to bring in NBC's David Noriega, who's following all of this for us. Start, David, in California for us, what we know as to these wildfires and the suspect who, in fact, was arrested.
Yeah, Yasmin, so the Butte County District Attorney has a 42-year-old, as yet unnamed man in custody that they say is suspected of actually starting this fire, the Park fire that is threatening the city of Chico. They say that he was allegedly witnessed pushing a flaming car into a gully in a big urban wilderness park directly outside the city. That is one of the reasons that this fire is so dangerous. It is extremely close to the city of Chico, which is a city of about 100,000 people. That outer perimeter of the fire is only about a mile away from the eastern edge of the city. If you look at a map, the authorities up there said that they're throwing everything they have at this fire, and it's still not enough. They have been bringing in reinforcements from all over the state of California all day. So far today, CAL FIRE has been listing that fire is only 3% contained. So the authorities are definitely struggling to get that one under control. About 4,000 people so far have been ordered evacuated.
Talk about Oregon as well. You have these mega fires up in Oregon.
Yeah, Yasmin, you mentioned one of the Durkee fire is about 270,000 acres. Just to put that in context, that's that's more than 400 square miles. Just by comparison, the whole city of New York, the 5 boroughs, is about 300 square miles. So we're dealing with an absolutely massive fire here. Now, just in the last couple of hours, some of the evacuation orders up there were actually lifted. So that's good news for some of the people who live up in that area. But that's not because the fire has been contained. It's just because of the way that the fire is moving. Some of the authorities up there have also said that there's been some rain, which one sheriff described as a godsend, but it's not nearly enough to actually meaningfully reduce the fire. Also problematically, that rain is because of storms that also come with lightning and very, very fast winds, sometimes up to 70 or 75 miles per hour, which make the task of containing that, once again, absolutely massive fire that much harder. Yasmin?
Dave Noriega for us. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Want to go to Uvalde, Texas now, where a former school police officer is pleading not guilty tonight to charges that he failed to protect 19 children and 2 teachers that were killed in the May 22 school shooting there. Some of the victims' loved ones angrily confronting the former officer as he left court.
Look at us. What is he going to say? Look at us. Say something. Say something to us. Sir, with all respect, you were smiling in there. You can't even say sorry to us.
That man, Adrian Gonzalez, faces 29 counts of child endangerment. He was one of the first officers on the scene that day. The indictment says he, quote, failed to engage, distract, or delay the shooter. Nearly 400 officers responding to the shooting, including the school's police chief, who also faces charges, but they waited more than 70 minutes to go into a classroom and kill the attacker. When it was all over, 21 people, mostly 9 and 10-year-olds, along with 2 teachers, they were all dead. The names and the faces you can see here. I want to bring in NBC's Guad Venegas, who's outside the courthouse for us in Uvalde, Texas. We talk about 400 officers responding that day, Guad, all waiting for 70 minutes outside that school, outside those classrooms, without engaging the shooter. Do we know why these 2 men, the former police chief and Officer Gonzalez, they were singled out now? And what more is to come?
Yasmin, what we know is that both of these 2 former officers were part of the school district police department. This would have been the first department that responded, right? Former police chief Pete Arredondo and Adrian Gonzalez, one of the first officers to arrive and respond. So it's been a long process. It's been more than 2 years with family members feeling frustrated much of the time because at first it was hard for them to get information as to where the investigation was going. And if you remember 2.5 years ago when this happened, they didn't even know how long the officers had originally waited. Eventually, a lot of this information was released. And, of course, now we know that the family members of the victims have been very upset at the way the investigation has been going. So now we have these 2 officers that have been indicted. Adrian Gonzalez appeared in court today. He pled not guilty. The judge informing him that if found guilty of these charges, he could face up to 2 years in prison. So again, it's the beginning of a legal process. We still don't know if more officers will be charged because we also had a lot of county police officers respond, state police officers, or as well as federal officers that day. But let's hear from Gonzalez's attorney who spoke today after the hearing to the media.
He feels he's innocent. He feels all he did was show up to try to help those children. I mean, look, there is justifiable righteous anger in this situation. I mean, our position is, should that anger be directed to Mr. Gonzalez? Our humble opinion is it should not. We have not seen any evidence that would show us that it should. There was over 370 officers there. We have not seen or even heard of a theory of why Mr. Gonzalez is being singled out.
So after the attorney spoke, I spoke to the father of one of the victims, and he told me that he partially agrees with what the attorney said, saying that other officers should be held accountable. But most of the parents that were here today say that Mr. Gonzalez is responsible, according to the way they see this, for what happened, and they agree with the charges that he is now facing, Yasmin.
I know you've been speaking, as you just mentioned, with family members that have been there. We saw some, obviously, footage of some family members yelling, for instance, at Gonzalez as he entered the courtroom. What are they telling you? What do they want to see happen? Is there anything that can happen that can bring them any closure to the horrific situation that they have gone through and continue to deal with today?
Yasmin, I don't think there's anything that's going to bring complete closure from what happened here. I mean, you look at the building behind me, the court building is across the street from the town square where the memorial was set up for the victims. In fact, if you see the video where Gonzalez was walking back to his vehicle after the hearing today and family members were yelling at him, at the far end, you can see the crosses that have been set up in memory of the victims. So it's going to be very difficult for them to get closure, but they feel like someone is being held accountable, and they feel like justice could be taking place here. Again, they do say that they want to see more people held accountable for what happened here. There's been some lawsuits that the families have filed against the manufacturer of the weapon, against the state police, and some other lawsuits. So for now, it's a step in the direction that they wanted to see. We'll have to wait and see what happens, and also to see if any other officers will be indicted in the future. Yasmin.
All right, Guad Venegas for us. Thank you, Guad. Appreciate it. Tonight, NASA saying 2 of its astronauts now in space for 50 days and counting will have to wait even longer before they can come home from the International Space Station, setting no official date to bring them back. The space agency saying they still need to finish doing some tests on the ground before they give their astronauts the go-ahead to come back home. Boeing's first crewed Starliner test flight went up to space in early June, and it's been there ever since. That is a lot longer than the 8 days originally planned. NASA says it's all because of issues with the thrusters on the capsule, and that in a worst case scenario, they have backup plans for getting the astronauts, the two people that you're seeing here, home as soon as possible. But they're still hoping that the Starliner is going to work and be able to bring astronauts back and forth from the space station for years to come. I want to bring in NBC's Jesse Kirsch, who is following this for us. NASA has already, Jesse, scrubbed 2 tentative return dates as they try to fix these issues. Are we any closer to getting these astronauts home?
NASA says that they're close, but they still have more work to be done. Namely, there are 2 items on the checklist that we know of specifically from officials. They say they want to do fire testing of these thrusters in space while the spacecraft is docked to the International Space Station. They also say they want to do an agency review, which wouldn't happen until at the earliest late next week. Here's part of what we heard from officials earlier today.
Right now, we're in the middle of the teardown of the thruster. So we have the thruster at the White Sands test facility. It's in the lab. It's been disassembled. And we're looking very carefully at the fuel, on the fuel valve and the oxygen.
All right, we have to go to Vice President Kamala Harris, who's speaking now after her meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Itself, including from Iran and Iran-backed militias such as Hamas and Hezbollah. From when I was a young girl collecting funds to plant trees for Israel, to my time in the United States Senate and now at the White House, I have had an unwavering commitment to the existence of the State of Israel, to its security, and to the people of Israel. I've said it many times, but it bears repeating. Israel has a right to defend itself, and how it does so matters. Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization. On October 7, Hamas triggered this war when it massacred 1,200 innocent people, including 44 Americans. Hamas has committed horrific acts of sexual violence and took 250 hostages. There are American citizens who remain captive in Gaza. Sagi Deko Hen, Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, Idan Alexander, Keith Siegel, Omer Nutra, and the remains of American citizens Judy Weinstein, Gad Haggai, and Itai Hen are still being held in Gaza. I have met with the families of these American hostages multiple times now, and I've told them each time they are not alone, and I stand with them. And President Biden and I are working every day to bring them home. I also expressed with the Prime Minister my serious concern about the scale of human suffering in Gaza, including the death of far too many innocent civilians. And I made clear my serious concern about the dire humanitarian situation there, with over 2 million people facing high levels of food insecurity, and 500,000 people facing catastrophic levels of acute food insecurity. What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. The images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, sometimes displaced for the second, third, or fourth time. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent. Thanks to the leadership of our President, Joe Biden, there is a deal on the table for a ceasefire and a hostage deal. And it is important that we recall what the deal involves. The first phase of the deal would bring about a full ceasefire, including a withdrawal of the Israeli military from population centers in Gaza. In the second phase, the Israeli military would withdraw from Gaza entirely, and it would lead to a permanent end to the hostilities. It is time for this war to end, and end in a way where Israel is secure, all the hostages are released, the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can exercise their right to freedom, dignity, and self-determination. There has been hopeful movement in the talks to secure an agreement on this deal. And as I just told Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is time to get this deal done. So to everyone who has been calling for a ceasefire, and to everyone who yearns for peace, I see you and I hear you. Let's get the deal done so we can get a ceasefire to end the war. Let's bring the hostages home, and let's provide much-needed relief to the Palestinian people. And ultimately, I remain committed to a path forward that can lead to a two-state solution. And I know right now it is hard to conceive of that prospect, but a two-state solution is the only path that ensures Israel remains a secure, Jewish, and democratic state, and one that ensures Palestinians can finally realize the freedom, security, and prosperity that they rightly deserve. And I will close with this then. It is important for the American people to remember the war in Gaza is not a binary issue. However, too often the conversation is binary, when the reality is anything but. So I ask my fellow Americans to help encourage efforts to acknowledge the complexity, the nuance, and the history of the region. Let us all condemn terrorism and violence. Let us all do what we can to prevent the suffering of innocent civilians, and let us condemn anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and hate of any kind. And let us work to unite our country. I thank you.
Madam Vice President, after your meeting, a major moment for Vice President Kamala Harris there, speaking to cameras after meeting with Israel's Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, and also the likely nominee, by the way, for the Democratic Party. Want to bring in Yamiche Alcindor, who is with us. So is senior political editor Mark Murray, also Kelly O'Donnell at the White House. And before we kind of get into this, guys, I do want to sum up what we just heard from the vice president there after this meeting, in which she talked about how Israel has the right to defend itself. And she has reiterated this many times over. She called Hamas a terrorist organization, and she named the American hostages still being held in Gaza, every single one of them, along with the remains of the 2 American hostages inside Gaza. She went on to identify the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, talking about the images of the dead children and saying, we cannot be numb to these images. I will not, she said, and I quote here, be silent. She then talked about the deal, the ceasefire deal that was on the table, and a 2-phase deal. She says the first would be a full, all-out ceasefire. The second phase of this deal would be a withdrawal of the Israeli military. She then addresses voters and the nation and folks that have been worried about the policy going forward, not only of the Biden administration, but of what Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu is doing. And she said, I see you and I hear you, and I advocate for peace and a ceasefire. I want to go first to Yamiche Alcindor, who's been following this as well. Yamiche, what stood out to you here?
Well, this was really a major moment because she was really coming here and wanting to make sure that she was being clear about her goals and what she talked about with Bibi Netanyahu, but she was also talking to the American people because there's so much questions about what her policies and what her administration and Harris administration might do when it comes to the Middle East. And there's a lot of people, especially the base of the Democratic Party, that has been really, really looking for more answers and more people to talk about the suffering that's going on in Gaza, because there is that big uncommitted vote in places like Michigan and places like Pennsylvania, where a large Muslim populations are saying that they might not be able to vote for Democrats when they historically have, because they were very, very angered at the administration for the policies that they believe led to the civilian death in Gaza, using, they say, at times, American money, because there's aid that goes to Israel. And I think when I look back at the notes that I took, I thought it was interesting that she started off with this biography moment where she was talking about the fact that she was a little girl Israel, where she was collecting funds to plant trees in Israel. This is, again, going back to the idea that she's trying to define herself as this candidate here and trying to bring people into sort of who she is and what has all gone into this moment where she is now at the top of the ticket, likely to be at the top of the ticket. She also talked about the fact that there was this dire situation in Gaza, and I think you talked about the fact that people shouldn't be numb. I thought about the fact that she was reading and talking about the fact that there are dead children and desperate people, really going to the heart of what this is, what this argument is, and what this conversation is all about. It's the fact that we see so many times images, horrifying images coming out of that region. So I think she was talking directly to people who are moved by those images. I also thought it was important that she says it's time to get this deal done. That was her message to Bibi Netanyahu, saying that she was essentially being very clear in her message that this war needs to come to an end. And last, I think when I picked up on what you said, which is I see you and I hear you. Yeah. I mean, that is the kind of language that moves people. And the Harris aides have told me that this is going to be an election not just about policies, not just about sort of what you write down on paper, but how you make people feel. And in this moment, she was trying to make people feel seen and heard, and she was trying to come off, and I think she, in some ways, I would say, people would say maybe she came off really genuine because she went back and started with sort of her long ties to Israel as a little girl.
Yeah, that was a major moment for the vice president and the likely nominee. Amish, I know you got to go and do some more reporting, so thank you for sticking with us for that. Mark, I'm going to go to you on this because I think that moment really draws from the conversation we were having before, which is how she's polling, especially with young people. We knew, obviously, the Biden administration was struggling in states like Michigan when it came to polling amongst Arab voters, amongst Muslim voters, and she addressed voters head on there at the very end of her speech, in which she said, and Yamish said it again, I see you and I hear you. What did you make of what we just heard from the vice president?
Yeah, what was really interesting to me, Yasmin, was that there was no daylight between President Biden's policy and his administration's policy and what Harris ended up saying today. And I think a lot of us were looking to see if she was actually going to have a little daylight, disagree with President Biden on the margins. And I saw absolutely no daylight at all. And also what also came out was her talk about that this is not a binary issue, that you're either with the Israelis or with the Palestinians. And she really did kind of carve out a middle ground, talking about the need for the ceasefire, talking about a permanent two-state solution, and also condemning the violence that Hamas ended up committing, but also talking about the tragedy for the Gazans as well, too. So really trying to thread that needle, Yasmin.
Mark Murray, I know you have to go as well, so thank you. Kelly O'Donnell, I want to wrap things up with you outside the White House, because I think Mark is right? She was very much in lockstep with President Biden, reiterating that her stance on the Israel-Gaza war is the same stance in which President Biden has had. But then at the very end, and I repeat this again because I think it was an important moment in which she kind of addressed voters, Americans that are listening to her in this first big kind of foreign policy moment and saying, I see you and I hear you.
Well, for the vice president, she does not want daylight between her position and the president's, because part of what makes her successful in this next phase is to be united with Joe Biden. He has endorsed her. They have been working partners, governing partners. But what you do get is that she says it in her own voice, and she brings her life experience to an issue of this magnitude, just as he brings his half-century of experience and frequently leans on his past relationships with prime ministers of Israel going back to Golda Meir. So what this really is about a new messenger carrying the same mission, but she is able to do it in ways that Joe Biden could not, and you could argue that he could do things that she could not. But right now, the focus is on where will she take this forward. And so it sounds fresh to many people's ears. It speaks to some of the things that have been reflected in the national conversation about concern for those who have been civilians so grievously harmed by this conflict. And she was very clear about the importance of standing with Israel, standing against anti-Semitism, and getting the hostages home. So she had all of the critical issues, and she did it in a way that presented sort of her Harris point of view on what is a Biden-Harris foreign policy. And this is a moment for her to begin to step forward. We'll see a lot of that as a candidate. Today was really a fusion of her official role and her candidate role in a way that people have not really seen before, and that makes it all the more magnified in this critical moment. Yasmin?
A very big moment for the vice president and likely nominee for the Democratic Party. Kelly O'Donnell, as always, thank you. We'll be right back with more coverage after this. Southwest Airlines announcing some major changes today. The carrier saying they're abandoning their famous open seating approach. In case you're not familiar, that's when passengers literally race to get the best seats on the plane. After 53 years of open seating, Southwest says they're planning to offer premium seating as soon as next year. It's coming as the airline is facing some pressure to boost lackluster earnings, I should say. NBC's Emily Ikeda joins me now. This is major. This is what Southwest has been known for a very long time, whether you liked it or not.
Yeah.
So it's a huge change for them.
What is Southwest without the rush, the mad dash to get on the plane? And I think that this shift, listen, people that are really big fans, the super fans of Southwest, they're going to point out Southwest is known for accessibility, affordability, the quick boarding process. And their fear is by moving away from that, it will also move away from those things when we lose the open seating and we move into the assigned seating. But the CEO points to research they collected. Some 80% of their customers say that they prefer an assigned seat, and they say that the #1 reason why people are not choosing Southwest is the lack of assigned seats. So we're hearing a little bit of back and forth from customers. Take a listen here.
It's more convenient if you go where you want to sit, where you want to sit.
Typically, when you have people rushing the section 1 to board, section 2, you got people just running in front of you and different things like that. I think it's nice to know that your seat is secure.
There's been a lot of pressure on Southwest right now. You look at its Q2 numbers, its profit is down some 46% compared to last year. So they're facing a lot of pressure, especially from investors, and they're hoping that by rolling out assigned seat, that will appeal to more people. Also, they're going to be introducing premier seating, so about a third of the plane will have extra leg room. So it's kind of this move to these other major airlines like Delta and American. And the difference is a lot of these airlines right now across the industry, they're experiencing overcapacity. Despite the record summer travel,
they're always overbooked.
They have no. But what I mean is they have extra seats right now. They have so many extra seats. But the difference is because Southwest doesn't have these premier seats, these extra costly seats, they're not seeing the lift in their revenue. So they're hoping that this will help dig them out of that scenario.
I gotta tell you, I get it because I like an assigned seat, and whenever I fly Southwest, I would have some anxiety about where I was going to end up if I got there too late and suddenly I was in the middle in row.
And the people are running.
75.
It's a mad dash. It's just a scramble. And so I think for a lot of people, it should potentially be relieving. But there's definitely a group of people that loved it, and they're going to miss it.
Yeah. Emily Ikeda, thank you. When we come back, new questions tonight around a yoga retreat in the Bahamas where a Chicago woman went missing. What we're learning about the disappearance of a second American more than a decade ago. Plus, Germany's biggest airport canceling more than 100 flights, but not because of bad weather. We're going to tell you why coming up next. All right, breaking tonight, we've been following that story of an American woman who went missing from a yoga retreat in the Bahamas last month. Tonight, NBC News is the first U.S. outlet to report that another American went missing from that same retreat just over a decade ago. 52-year-old Wesley Bell disappeared from there back in 2013 after he wandered off to go snorkeling, according to someone who was on the retreat with him. It appears there's no evidence of foul play in Bell's case, but police haven't commented on the matter, drawing parallels to this year's June disappearance of Taylor Casey. NBC Out's Matt Levitas broke this story for us and joins me now. This is fascinating, intriguing, a lot of questions, it seems, and not a lot of answers. Let's talk about this discovery of Wesley Bell a decade ago and his disappearance. Is there any connection between his disappearance and the one we learned about in June?
So right now, police have not returned our request for comment. I spoke with Wesley's father, Don, earlier in the week, who said that there was a massive search for his son, but they were not successful. They did not find his body. He believed that his son drowned. I also spoke with a woman who was with Wesley on that retreat back in 2013. She said that he went snorkeling the day before he disappeared. They found his clothes and his hat on the beach the next day. As of right now, we do not have any reason to believe that these cases are connected, except for the fact that both of these people went missing while they were on this yoga retreat.
So then there's Taylor Casey, and Taylor's family did actually not reveal that she was a trans woman initially when she went missing because they were afraid it would distract from the investigation. Where are we on this investigation as to what happened to her? And have we heard anything else from the family?
Right. So when her family initially started speaking with the media, they did not disclose that she was transgender, which raises a ton of questions as to whether or not she could have been targeted for her gender identity.
Right.
Now, I spoke with her mom, who said that she didn't want the media to know because she thought that the media might actually disparage her daughter for her gender identity, or that they wouldn't take the case as seriously. Where that case stands today, police found Taylor's phone in the ocean several weeks ago. More recently, they told us that they were not able to recover any sort of information on that phone. But with this new information that someone went missing 10 years at the exact same yoga retreat, we have more questions than we do answers.
Certainly. Matt Livitas, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So NBC covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because it's tough to read, to watch, or listen to all of them, our teams around the world have done it for you. Here's a look at what they're watching in a segment that we call The Global. Out of Belgium, authorities detaining 7 people for questioning today over suspected terrorist activity. We still don't know who they are or what group they could be tied to. This is all happening a day before the Olympics open across Belgium's border in France. In Taiwan, severe floods submerging homes and vehicles after a typhoon swept across the island. You can see people there trying to save some of their stuff. Officials saying this is the strongest typhoon to hit Taiwan in years, with wind gusts of up to 100 miles an hour. Out of Germany, the busiest airport there, canceling hundreds of flights after climate activists breached security fences, some apparently attaching themselves to the tarmac, trying to disrupt a super busy air travel week to bring awareness to climate change. Police saying all of them were detained. All right, coming up. It started as a gossip page and now has some serious political coverage. And both parties want a piece of the Shade Room's massive audience. My conversation with the founder of the Shade Room in the original tonight. Coming up next. To tonight's original now, with in-depth reporting on a topic that we've been watching. It's a media outlet with a huge Black audience that could end up being highly influential in this election. The Shade Room started as this kind of TMZ-style gossip page, but has become a massive platform with millions of viewers and a demographic that both candidates want to try to win over. But the meteoric growth has not been without some controversy. We spoke with the founder of the Shade Room about the outlet's rise and the responsibility.
The Shade Room. Things between Erica Mena and Safari have been pretty quiet lately. What started as a celebrity gossip Instagram page rooted in the Black community, once even called Instagram's TMZ, is rapidly transforming into a full-fledged media company, pushing into original programming and serious political coverage.
The Shade Room was started on accident. It was a dare from one of my friends to do something with my life because I was unemployed.
Angie Wandu says she founded the Shade Room broke and down on her luck 10 years ago.
It blew up. It got over 10,000 followers in the first week and a half.
Wow.
6 months in, it was 500,000. And from there, it's constantly grown.
We went to South Carolina and sat down with former VP and 2020 president candidate Joe Biden.
Now Wandu's team says the Shade Room has 40 million followers across their platforms.
The site still looks more like TMZ than the New York Times, and posts often use information from other media outlets.
But the Shade Room reportedly brings in millions of dollars a year, although the company would not confirm revenue numbers with NBC News. It's even joined the White House press pool.
Traveling with Vice President Kamala Harris on Air Force Two.
I am Kamala Harris, and this is a special TSR Investigates.
That more serious tone, sometimes clashing with the company's social media roots. The Instagram page running sponsored content like this alongside more newsy posts and facing some criticism, especially after a post in 2023 about federal aid for Maui wildfire victims.
The Shade Room, when it comes to information, is one of the worst things that has ever happened to the Black community.
The post accused of underplaying President Biden's wildfire response and not clearly sharing the entirety of federal support.
How do you make sure you have safety measures in place so that there's no misinformation put out through the Shade Room?
If you go online, people will say, if it's not on the Shade Room, we don't believe it, right? Because being reputable is something that is really important to us. One of the things that we've done is all of our writers now have to have journalism degrees. We also hired a political consultancy firm. So all of our political posts are filtered through that.
As it continues to grow, and with a historic election coming up in November, the Shade Room offers a unique conduit to many Black voters. Its followers and audience called Roomies help make up a demographic that proved crucial to Biden's election in 2020, one that now both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are aggressively courting. Support for both Biden and Harris have traditionally been strong amongst Black voters. But NBC's latest polling showing 32% of those voters currently disapproving of President Biden. As Kamala tries to re-energize the campaign for president, the spotlight will turn to platforms like the Shade Room and its massive audience.
Even just the fact that we are a part of the press pool, even the fact that they have opened the doors to the Shade Room and platforms like it shows you that they understand the power of the Black vote.
We asked the Shade Room about how they're going to be covering Kamala Harris's campaign now that she has declared. In a statement, Angie Wandu told us, quote, "We are going to cover her speaking engagements, audience and celebrity opinions, her policies in the same way we will do for the opposing candidate." All right, still to come, everything you need to know about what could be the most ambitious Olympic opening ceremony ever. We're taking you to Paris hours before it kicks off on the Seine. That's next. Excitement is reaching a fever pitch in Paris and across the world, less than 24 hours before the Olympics opening ceremony. Final preps along the Seine, where the opening ceremony will be set with representatives from all participating countries floating down the river in barges. Meanwhile, as thousands of athletes keep settling into the Olympic Village, some are reporting a shortage of certain foods, like eggs, according to the French newspaper L'Equipe. The villagers' caterers saying they're going to increase, quote, volume levels to satisfy athletes. Hopefully they'll make sure they have an œuf. Get it? That's a French pun for you. Anyway, Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons is there for us in Paris. What's going on with the food? I mean, they need their protein, these athletes. They need their eggs.
Yeah, they sure do. And there are those reports, as you mentioned, that they aren't getting them. Listen, it's always the thing with the Olympics that you don't expect. You know, we talk about the things we worry about. We're worried about the Seine, for example. Will it be clean enough? Will it be too rough for an opening ceremony? All good. And yet now we get this other issue, which, frankly, we didn't expect, which is a food shortage. As you say, L'Equipe has been reporting it. Our colleagues at Sky News spoke to Team GB, Team Great Britain. They were told that there is an issue by Team GB. So there does appear to be something of a food shortage at the Athletes' Village. Eggs are being talked about. Clearly, it's not going to be everything. But I think one of the aspects here is that this whole trying to do things sustainably, trying to get the food in locally, all that kind of thing, it's not easy, right? I mean, we already saw the vibe on social media with athletes about those cardboard beds, and people are, kind of laughing about them and testing them out. Again, that was an idea for sustainability. So listen, it is difficult to save the planet, but that doesn't mean it isn't worth it.
Can we talk about this casual drop-in, it seems you had, on French President Emmanuel Macron and everybody else involved with the Olympic Games and how they're feeling ahead of the opening ceremony?
Well, I don't know about casual drop-in. I mean, it was me and kind of a few hundred other people, all of them more important than I am. But it was a sustainability summit tonight to put the emphasis once again on those issues for the Olympics. Antonio Stanguet, who is, of course, the head of the Paris 2024 Olympics, was there. And I managed to grab him and have a quick word. And I said to him, just simply, how are you feeling? He said, I feel great. And that's the atmosphere you get here, Yasmin, despite what they're trying to pull off with this opening ceremony tomorrow, which is history-making, the first time outside of a stadium, as we have said again and again, but you can't say it too much because, frankly, it's going to be amazing. Despite all that, the atmosphere is buzzing, people seem relaxed, and again, at this conference, they seemed relaxed. The President Macron, came and gave a speech, strolled around, chatted to people, so things appear to be going well. Cross fingers.
Keir, I know the last time you and I spoke, we were talking about whether or not the mayor was going to swim in the Seine, and in fact, we know the mayor did. Did you ever do it, as I challenged you to do?
Yeah. I haven't done it yet. Okay. No, thank you, though. I'm just trying, well, you know, I feel like I need to be healthy for the next few weeks. I got some work to do.
Yeah, you got some work to do.
I mean, I guess I'm not saying I'm more important than the athletes, obviously. I just want to be clear. I mean, clearly it's important that they can swim safely, and everyone's telling us that it is going to be safe, but so far I haven't taken the plunge.
Maybe when the Olympics is all said and done, Kira, we can see you jump in that river there as a celebratory end of the Olympics.
It's a deal. It's a deal.
Okay, then. You heard it here first.
Yes, it's a deal. When I say it's a deal, what I mean is no.
Virtual shake on it. Okay, what I mean is no. Kira Simmons, thank you so much. Appreciate it. That's a wrap for this hour. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.